Dating someone with borderline personality disorder? Brace yourself for a journey where passion and intensity meet complexity and chaos. Before you lose yourself trying to save them, learn the essential truths that will protect your peace and your heart, because this relationship is unlike anything you've experienced before. When you're dating someone with borderline personality disorder, you're stepping into a world that can be incredibly intense, deeply passionate, and, let's be honest, a bit overwhelming at times. This is a relationship dynamic that can have highs as high as any you've ever felt. But the lows can be equally intense, so it's essential to prepare yourself. You'll find that the emotional landscape is unlike anything else. The connection can feel uniquely powerful, even magical, yet fraught with moments of deep frustration and confusion. If you want to understand what it takes to navigate this journey with both compassion and a steady sense of self, I'll break down the 5 most crucial insights you need. Let's start with understanding how BPD affects the brain and behavior. People often throw around terms like mood swings or overly emotional when they talk about BPD, but those labels really don't capture the complexity of this condition. Borderline personality disorder is a neurodevelopmental disorder, meaning that it affects how a person's brain processes emotions, relationships, and yes, even the very way they interpret reality. This isn't just someone being overly sensitive or difficult. Their nervous system is actually wired in a way that makes certain types of interactions or feelings feel amplified, sometimes to an extreme degree. Imagine this, where most people might feel a mild sense of disappointment or frustration in response to a small slight. Someone with BPD can experience a much deeper, more intense emotional reaction that might seem disproportionate to the situation. These reactions aren't just random or arbitrary. They're rooted in the way their brain is set up to respond to perceived threats, losses, or uncertainties. Often, past experiences, especially those involving abandonment, rejection, or other significant traumas, have primed their nervous system to respond as though every hint of conflict or potential loss is a life or death situation. So, understanding BPD means understanding that their reactions are neurologically influenced, not something they're choosing or trying to control consciously. It's like being on a roller coaster that they can't get off, and sometimes neither can you. Now, when someone with BPD attaches to another person, something incredibly powerful happens. This attachment, often called the favorite person dynamic, can become one of the most central relationships in their life. The person with BPD tends to form an almost idealized view of this favorite person, often a romantic partner, but sometimes a close friend or family member. This attachment goes beyond what most people would think of as ordinary love or affection. It's more like an intense dependency. When you become their favorite person, it's as if you're the sun around which they orbit. This can feel amazing at first because they may idealize you, treat you like the most important person in the world, and make you feel cherished and needed. But here's the catch. This attachment isn't purely based on love. It's also deeply rooted in fear. The fear of abandonment. While they might see you as the ultimate source of comfort and security, this reliance can become incredibly intense, to the point where even small, innocent acts like not responding to a text right away or spending an evening with friends might trigger deep feelings of anxiety or panic for them. They might start imagining worst-case scenarios, wondering if you're losing interest or planning to leave. For someone with BPD, these scenarios can feel very real and immediate, even if there's no basis for them in reality. They'll feel that intense anxiety or fear of abandonment, and to them it's as if the worst-case scenario is happening in real time. This attachment dynamic can lead to behaviors that may seem confusing or even contradictory. On one hand, they might seem incredibly loving, affectionate, and devoted to you. But as soon as they perceive any sign of potential abandonment, whether it's real or imagined, those positive emotions can flip in an instant. Suddenly, they might become fearful, angry, or even accusatory. This shift doesn't necessarily mean they love you any less. It's a reflection of the turmoil they feel inside when they fear losing the person who has become their emotional anchor. So if you're dating someone with BPD, it's crucial to remember that these intense reactions aren't personal. They're part of how BPD manifests and part of how your partner processes attachment. which for them is often fraught with intense emotional ups and downs. This brings us to the third key insight, the concept of emotional instability. You'll find that a person with BPD can experience rapid, sometimes extreme mood shifts. Picture this. One moment, your partner is overjoyed, affectionate, and entirely focused on you. Then, without warning, their mood changes, and they might seem angry, distant, or overwhelmed. These shifts can happen in minutes, and they often come with little warning. It's not uncommon for someone with BPD to move from an emotional high to a deep low in the blink of an eye, and this can be incredibly disorienting for both of you. One of the hardest parts about dating someone with BPD is realizing that these mood shifts are, to a large extent, beyond their control. Their emotions are so raw and intense that they're almost primal. Most people have an internal braking system that lets them put some distance between feeling and emotion and acting on it. But for those with BPD, that braking system often isn't as effective, which means they may go from feeling something to expressing it full force, without much of a filter. So, when they feel afraid, hurt, or angry, they may not be able to contain those emotions in the way someone else might. They're experiencing each emotion in its most intense form, and sometimes that intensity spills over in ways that can be difficult to handle. Understanding this emotional volatility is crucial because it helps you to avoid taking these shifts personally. These swings aren't a reflection of something you did or didn't do. Rather, they're part of the internal roller coaster that defines BPD. So if you find yourself on the receiving end of an intense outburst, it can help to remind yourself that this isn't about you. It's about them struggling with an overwhelming rush of feelings they don't know how to manage. And while it's natural to want to help them or calm them down, it's essential to remember that ultimately they have to learn how to regulate their own emotions. Your role isn't to fix their feelings for them, but to understand where these reactions are coming from. Let's move on to the fourth important insight, the need for reassurance and validation. Many people with BPD lack a stable, constant sense of self. While most of us have an internal image of who we are that stays relatively consistent, those with BPD often don't. Their sense of identity can be fragmented and fragile, which means they may rely heavily on those around them, especially their favorite person, for a sense of stability and reassurance. This can lead to a frequent need for validation, as they look to others to affirm who they are and what they mean to them. They might ask for reassurance about your feelings or need you to remind them of their worth, sometimes even multiple times a day. For someone in a relationship with a person who has BPD, this need for constant validation can be draining. You may feel like you're walking on eggshells, trying to avoid saying or doing anything that could upset them or make them feel insecure. But here's the reality. No amount of reassurance from you will ever be enough to fill that void completely. Their sense of self and security has to come from within. And while you can support them along the way, it's essential to avoid getting so caught up in their emotional needs that you neglect your own. When you're dating someone with BPD, one of the biggest challenges is finding that balance, offering support without letting their needs completely overshadow your own sense of self and personal boundaries. It's natural to want to reassure and comfort them, but if you're constantly giving, you may start to feel emotionally drained or resentful over time. So set boundaries where needed, and don't be afraid to communicate your own needs. Healthy relationships require both partners to maintain their individual identities, and in a relationship with someone with BPD, this balance is even more crucial. The fifth and final key insight I want to share is about the borderline between neurosis and psychosis, which is where BPD often sits. In fact, the term borderline originally referred to this idea of being on the borderline between neurosis, milder emotional or mental disturbances, and psychosis, which involves a complete break from reality. People with BPD can sometimes experience episodes that seem almost psychotic in nature. They might have periods of paranoia, dissociation, or an intense fixation on certain fears or beliefs that don't align with reality. These episodes can be alarming, both for them and for you. To someone with BPD, these periods of paranoia or intense fear can feel terrifyingly real. They might genuinely believe, even for a short time, that you're betraying them, that people are out to harm them, or that they're fundamentally unworthy of love. In these moments, reasoning with them or trying to snap them out of it often doesn't work, because they're operating from a place where rational thought is overshadowed by intense emotional turmoil. These episodes don't mean they have multiple personalities or are a danger to others, but they do reflect how BPD can affect their perceptions and emotions on a deep, sometimes unsettling level. For someone in a relationship with a person who has BPD, witnessing these episodes can be confusing and emotionally draining. It's important to approach these moments with compassion, knowing that while they may not be grounded in reality, the feelings are very real for them. Supporting a partner through these episodes without getting sucked into the emotional chaos yourself can be challenging, but it's essential for maintaining both your own stability and the stability of the relationship. At the end of the day, dating someone with BPD requires a level of patience, understanding, and resilience that isn't typical of most relationships. It involves a constant balance between supporting your partner and protecting your own mental health. There will be moments of intense connection and deep passion, but also moments of frustration and exhaustion. This isn't a relationship for everyone, and it's okay to recognize that.